Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and the ladies will get in here when and if they get here. Nevertheless, I live. We're on page 52 in the workbook, letter B. And I think, that may not be right. I may have lied to you. We are on letter B, but let's see, it's page, there it is, page 54, okay. The letter B here is being conformed to God versus being conformed to the world. It means being poured into the mold of God's way of conducting our lives. Last week we talked about not being conformed to the world. And God tells us don't be conformed to the world, but the reverse of that is he wants us to be conformed to him, conformed to God, God's image. So that is what we're supposed to do. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17 say all scripture is given by God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished into all good works. And that's that the man of God may be perfect. That word perfect doesn't mean we're never going to be perfect, okay, until we get to heaven. But we are becoming perfected. When it talks about being perfect, it talks about in Hebrews also, that means mature. That is what that word means. It doesn't mean perfect. It means without the habit of sin. It doesn't mean we don't sin. But when sin when big sin, gross sin, they call it, is a habit in our life. It's not like we messed up and we did this. It's continuing over and over and over and over and over. That's not mature. Being perfected is not having the habit of sin. It talks about a pastor is supposed to be perfect or a deacon is supposed to be perfect, one of the two. They're never perfect, but they don't have that big habit of public sin. That's kind of what that's referring to. And the Bible is God's mold that we pour ourselves into to mature our lives. I was thinking I could have illustrated that. I could have made like a Jell-O mold, because you take Jell-O, you mix it up, hot water, you pour it into a mold, and you put it in the refrigerator, and it gets sort of solid, kind of like me, sort of solid. But then you could take it out, but it conforms to the mold that you put it in, and that's what God wants us to do. The Bible here is. I started to say, I rewrote this. I used to say the Bible's our roadmap, and the Bible's not our roadmap. I can read the Bible all day long, and it doesn't tell me where I'm going in life. Does that make sense? But it is our rules for the road. As we take the journey that God directs us on, as we're walking on the journey, the road, whatever that God has us on, this is my rules for the road. This is the warning signs, the information signs, the distance signs, the signs that set the law, the speed limit, the stop, the go, the yield. That's what this is as I travel the journey that God has me in life, because we all have a different road to take, but we all have the same rules on the road. And that is what we're supposed to do. As we walk with him, as he walks with us, he has his arm around our shoulder. He has his hand on us. And the further we travel with him, the longer God's hand is on us. Isaiah 49:2, it says, he hath made my mouth like a sharp sword, in the shadow of his hand hath he hid me. He made me a polished shaft. His quiver hath he hid me. In his quiver hath he hid me. Now, when it talks about a polished shaft, this is the third week in a row I forgot to bring in what I wanted to bring in. So I went out in the shop and I found the best I could do here. But a shaft, especially like a tool like this. Now, this tool down here, it's rough and it's just weathered a little bit, but it's been used a fair amount. And you can see the difference up here. Okay, it's never had oil rubbed in it or anything else on purpose to make it shiny. Now, I have a much better. I have one at home that was my grandfather's. Okay, and it's been used a lot. He used to go out in his garden, and it's actually a hoe, not a whatever that's called. That little pointy thing. You mess with me today, and you guys are in trouble. It's like, okay. But it's been used, and the oils from his hand have rubbed it and rubbed it and rubbed it and rubbed it, and it's smooth and it's polished because it's been handled over and over and over. Nobody put like tongue oil on it or something and rubbed it and to make it shiny. It's just from your hand. tongue oil or mink oil or linseed oil, whatever. But it's never been done that. It's just the natural oils from a hand. And when this was written, one of the main weapons they used was a spear, okay, and they would throw that, they'd handle it, they'd hold it, and it would become polished just by the oils from their hand. And that's what God wants us to be. He wants us to be a polished shaft. He wants people to look at us and say, I see that God's hand has been on you a lot because you're polished. You're being perfected. He's used you over and over, and I can see the mark of where he's held you much. It's made smooth. The rough edges are worn off. The bumps are kind of gone. And I can tell that God's had you in his hand a lot. And it's from constant use. If you know any old carpenters that used the wooden-handled hammers, if they'd had their hammer for 10, 20, 30 years, a framing hammer, and they used it and used it and used it, that shaft is just smooth, okay, and it's polished from use. And that's what that's what God wants us to look like. And you know, the kind of question is, can people look at you and tell that you've been in God's hand, that he's been using you, holding you, and using you as a tool for him? And the only cure for that, you can't do anything except let yourself be used as long and as much as you can. And that mark is left. I mean, I look at, I was sitting last night, after I came down and did all this stuff, I just kind of sitting in the back there, and I was looking at Brother Jim Morton. And Jim's not going to be with us a whole lot longer. He's changed a lot physically in the last couple of years. You know, he's starting to stoop a little bit. But when you look at him, when I look at him, I just see a perfected, a polished shaft. He's not perfect, but he is. I just look at him and I see Christ. When I look at him, that's who I see. I see Christ. And he's Brother Jim. He just, there's no other way to describe it. He's one of those people that you just see Christ. If I had a problem, when I have had problems, I go to him and say, Brother Jim, you need to talk to me. You need to help me here. Can we just talk? Can I just spend time with you? And he's just there. It's kind of like, and I don't take this the wrong way, it's like sitting down with God and just talking to God. And he's not God. I get that. But there's so much God there that it just comes through him. And that's what we want to be. That's what we strive to be. I hope that's what you strive to be. That's what I do. And I'm not doing very good at it. I still got a lot of bumps and splinters and all this other stuff. But over time, that is our goal. 1 John 2:15 says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. I think I talked about this a little bit last time. But if we're not loving God, we're not obeying him. There's a verse in the New Testament that says, you show me your love by your obedience. And I paraphrased that badly. But that's how God spells love, is obedience. He says, if you're not obeying me, you don't love me. You just don't. True love is watch this. I don't obey him because I have to. I obey him because I want to. I just desire to. I was talking to somebody the other day about different, leadership styles and this and that. And there's the three guys, the personality types. There's the type A personality that is very loud and can be very arrogant, but they don't have to be. But they're take charge. They're going to do things. Come, let's go do this. Pastor, type A personality. Okay, and then there's the other personality that is just the visionary, and they always have a vision of just, oh, we should do this, and wouldn't that be awesome? And they can see things, but they're not good at getting them done. But they can see things, and it's good to have a vision. We're supposed to. And then there's the guys that just they're not the take charge people, and they're not the visionaries. They're just the ones they call them Mr. Steady, just a plodder, if you will. They just keep on going and keep on going. Now, every one of those has a different leadership style. I'm a Mr. Steady. Okay, that's just who I am. I'm not going to take charge, and I don't see the vision. but I'll take his vision and I'll follow him, and I'll just keep on going and keep on going. My leadership style is different than preachers. Okay, it's different than the visionary, but it's all there. Okay, but it doesn't matter if I love God, I'm going to obey him. I want to. There you go. I just connected that change of logic that I lost there. The reason I was saying that is any leadership style that you have, the way you get people to follow you is not like this. You go in and you hook them and pull them, like, because they don't want to get hooked with this thing. Or like, you have to follow me, you like right now, right? That's not it at all. That's not how Christ, the way Christ led is he was kind, he was gentle, he was strong, he was firm, he was never weak. But people desired to follow him. That's for anybody, that's the best leader. Is to cause people to want to do what you want them to do, not to tell them what to do, but have them desire to do what you want to do. A good teacher in the classroom, we always have these days when we have, backwards day or reverse day, okay? The kids get to teach, and the teachers, and you get the kid up there. How does a kid, it gets up there to be a teacher? What does he do? What's the first thing to do? He starts ordering people around. You go do this, you go do this. And the kids are just looking at him like, no. But that's their idea of leadership. And that's not what it is at all. It's just not. So if we're not loving God, we're not obeying him. Because that's what we're supposed to do. If we're not obeying him, then he's not working in our life. Because we're not doing what he asks. If he's not working in our life, then nothing will work for good in our life. And it's not the what in our life that causes good. It's the who in our life. It's not the circumstance in our life that yields, that puts out, that causes us to receive peace and joy. It's the relationship. And I just got in big, bold-faced words here. Not that you can see it or anything, and I'm not going to yell because I don't want to right now. But this is a warning here. It's your choice. What do you want? If you want all things to work together for good, if that's what you want, then you have to do what God says for that to happen. And if you're not willing to do that, then you won't receive all things working together for good. It just will not happen. We choose to walk with him. We choose to allow ourselves to be conformed, or we don't. God is not going to make us and make us into that image. He wants us to give ourselves to him, and then he will do what needs to be done. Okay, but we have to willingly, the willing sacrifice. We have to get up on the altar, and then when things start happening and they get scary, we have to stay there. And we have to not fight him. We have to, as we do that, as we're willing to do, then he can conform us to his image. But he's not going to force us into his image. Sometimes I kind of wish he would, because life would be so much easier if he would just make me behave. But he doesn't. He wants us to behave on our own. Now, a young child, you make them behave. Absolutely. But but that's what you're doing, is you're kind of forcing them into the mold, because you discipline the behavior you don't want, you encourage behavior you do want, and slowly it kind of makes them behave. And as they get older and older and older, you take off the restraints, and you kind of put it back on them to do right because they want to. Now, you still have restraints and things, but as they get older and older, the parent removes restraints, but it doesn't make them gone. Those restraints are passed to the young person, and as they get older, they take more and more of the responsibility. And the parent gives them more and more responsibility. The parent backs away from the responsibility by giving it to the child, the young person. And when, technically when they're 18, whatever age that may be, when they become an adult, and that's not like, they turned 18, now they're an adult, and that's what we say, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. That's about 35. But hey, 300-400 years ago, it was when you were 13. And so it's not an age thing. But when they have taken the responsibility for their own actions and said, I've got this now, and I still go to you for advice and all that, but the parent is no longer the controller, if you will, the person is taken onto himself. That's what we're supposed to be there. We do it because we desire to. That's what God wants. That's how he wants us to be. Okay, Romans 8:28. We know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. All things work together for good. That word all, Brother Steve, that's one of his favorite famous sayings, Steve Currington. All means all, and that's all it means. Because there's no other way to define it. All is everything. I don't know any way to say it. It's all. If it's not all, it's not all. If it's all, it is everything. And all things work together. All things work together to them that love God. See, that's what causes it to happen. If I want all things to work together for good in my life, what's the prerequisite? Love God. And how do I love God? I obey him, willingly obey him. And am I going to mess up? Absolutely. But I'm going to keep returning to it all the time. I'm sorry I blew it. I'm going to try it again. I'm sorry I blew it. I'm going to try it again. But I'm loving God. And as I do that, he takes care of whatever's going on. He can make that all work together for good. I think one of the things I've seen and thought a lot in the past is I love God. All things are going to work together for good. Meaning the bad stuff's going to disappear. But that's not what it means. How long were you out of work, Tom? A year. Almost the entire year, right? That's a year to me. Now what? That's not a good thing. He's got house. He's got this stuff. He's got bills. He's got kids. They have to live. And God saw fit to not let him have a job. He did nothing to cause that. That was not a consequence of any action. It was a thing that God said, here, I got to get for you. And watch this. Did that work together for good in his life? I knew him through this whole time. And from my point of view, he came out of that as a stronger, more solid Christian than when he went into it. Not that he was bad to start with. But it worked together for good for him, for his wife, for his kids, for his marriage, for his family, just all together. That's not, God didn't take that thing away. God used that. That's what he does. He doesn't change our circumstance. He changes us in the circumstance, but he also takes those circumstances that we see as not productive, and he works them all together, and good comes out. Things that we caused, things that we didn't cause. It's not the things that are going on as much as how we deal with them and how we let him work in our life. And he brings it and just brings us out better as apples of gold and the pitchers of silver. Okay, it's a beautiful picture. That's what God does. When we're poured into God's mold for our lives, we begin to learn how to love God. And when we love God, we're obeying God. And when we're loving and obeying God, he's free to work in our lives. When we're loving God and obeying God and he's working in our life, then he will cause all things to work together for good. Things past, things present, things future. It's his responsibility. It's his job to do that. And he can. He absolutely has the ability and he has the desire to. Our job is to love him, to obey him, to grow. We do that. He does the rest. Now, he tells us things to do. That's part of obeying him. It's not like I just sit back and say, oh, I love you, I love you, I love you, and all these things change. It says, I love you, what do you want me to do? Oh, okay, I will do that because that's what you asked me to do. Okay, I love you. What do you want me to do? Oh, I will do that because you asked me to do that. That's what it is. It's not that we're not working. It's not that we're not doing things. It's just that it's not us doing the things to get the result that we want. That doesn't work. It's us asking God what he wants us to do, and then he tells us, and we say, yes, sir, right away, and I will, and I do. That's us. We're still doing works, but we're not doing works for us to get what we want. We're doing works for God because that's what he wants. And my goal, my desire there is to please him, not my desire is not to do the work. Does that make sense? It gets really complicated. We let it get really complicated, but it doesn't have to be. We just have to practice, have to work at it. It's our attitude change. I have to decrease so that he can increase. Again, Sunday morning. How do I give when I'm empty? How do I give when I have nothing to give? I can't. It's impossible. It's true. I can't give if I don't have anything to give. That makes sense, right? But with God, that's not the way it works. When I don't have anything to give, I go to God, and he gives me what he wants me to have and what he wants me to give. That's what I give. It wasn't I didn't have anything. It was his that he gave to me that I could give away. That's a hard thing to do. Yeah, that's a hard thing to do. And God may not change the things in our life, the circumstance, but he will change the outcome of the things in our life. Because we look at it and say, oh, this isn't good. And he looks at it and says, it's just a thing. It doesn't matter. Here's how I want you to do it. Here's what I want you to do. And as we do that, he brings good out of it. It's not, we look at it and say, I don't get it. And he looks at it and says, don't worry about it. I got this. And we have to let him have it. I'm not good at that. He says, I got this. And I'm like, I don't think so, because I'm just not seeing that. And he says, you don't have to see it. If you're going to have that much trouble with it, just close your eyes and take my hand. And that's even worse. but that is what he wants. And I'm not saying he wants us to be blind. It's not blind faith. It's rational faith. The rational part is not that I can figure it out, but I've seen it enough in the past that I can say, all right, I will close my eyes, and I know that you will do it because I've seen you do it in the past. That's not irrational. That's not this blind faith thing. That's acting on evidence from past things. That's how faith grows. What's the other word for faith? Confidence. Strong faith, strong confidence. If I go to this chair, Pastor just used this many times, I trust, I have confidence that chair is not going to collapse when I sit in it. Now, I haven't sat in it yet, so I don't know that it's not going to, but I'm pretty sure I have enough confidence that I'm willing to sit there. Because if I didn't have confidence in the chair, I promise I would not sit there. So I sat down a couple of times, and you're sitting down, and you're like, whoa, no. Nay, nay, as Pastor would say. Because that's a weird feeling when something you trust doesn't happen, right? Have you ever done that? Sat in a chair, and it's going, bloop. That's kind of scary. Oh, I have a couple of times. And I've watched it. It's much more fun to watch than to do. That's much more fun. But that's what God wants. See, but that's so is it reasonable for me to trust that chair? Is it reasonable for me to trust that chair? But I'm doing it on faith. Well, faith, that's just not reasonable. It is. That's what God does. And there's some times when we absolutely have no idea. it's still reasonable because he's delivered so many times in the past. And he's done it here. So I can trust him. It's not easy to trust him, but I absolutely can and should. It's a reasonable faith. I've got like 3 minutes left. I wanted to do this other illustration so much, but I'll do it next week. So we just have to do this stuff. God can take all the things, the good things, the bad things, the sad things, the hurtful things, the things that are in our control, the things that are out of our control, all things, and he uses them. He can use them together to give himself glory and to cause them to work together for our good. He can. Now, he will. He wants to. But we decide if we're the ones that give him permission. Does that make sense? It comes from, he has every ability. He has all the desire. But if we won't let him, he's, okay. Okay. And he doesn't because we won't let him. Well, my life's a mess. Why aren't things working out? Because you wouldn't let him do it. Because I wouldn't let him do it. We have to let him. That's my next point. And I got a really good illustration. I really like it, but we have to do it. I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to do it anyway, just to close this thing. How do you give when you don't have anything to give? Now, Pastor preached that Sunday morning, and I really liked it. And it was good, and I said, I really like this. And this is really good. And I remembered it, obviously, and it meant something to me. But it didn't become real to me. I mean, really real, until last night. Because I'm not kidding. When he asked me to preach, I'm like, yes, I would love to do that. I want to. I desire to. 30 minutes. Nah, that's the problem. But when he said, I want you to preach on heaven, I almost said no because I don't know if I just don't know much about it. So I messaged and I wrote the stuff up and I got it all together and I was just zero confidence in what I was going to get up and say. I don't not have confidence here because this is my wheelhouse. This is what I do. I've been studying this. I'm immersed in it. And it's not that I think I know a lot, that God keeps showing me all this stuff, but I was nothing. And I didn't have any time. It's the first 2 days of school. And we're doing all this stuff, and I slept till 10 o'clock at night, and I'm early in the morning till late at night. I'm like, oh, but I never worried, other than I was just, but I wasn't worried because I just said, God, I know that you can, and I know that you will. I don't know what it's going to be, and it's really scary for me. But so I don't know. I went up and I sat in the front pew, and they were doing their singing and stuff, and I didn't stand up and I didn't sing. I was reading a couple verses in my Bible, just over and over and over again. I kept saying, God, I don't have anything here. I don't think this is going to work. I don't think it's going to be good. I told Caleb on my way up there, I said, if it just starts getting weird, just put on a preaching tape and I'll lip sync. I did. I wasn't serious. That would have been really awkward. But I had absolutely no confidence in what was going to happen when I really didn't. I really didn't think it was, good isn't the right word. When I sat down, I was like, I don't even know if anybody understood a word I said or anything. It was very disconcerting, if you will. No, I'm not looking for praise, but thank you. But a couple of things happened. One of them was, and I had probably more compliments on that, and you know me, I'm not looking for that, than I've ever had for that. But so I was talking to Brother Ken, sitting in the front row, and he says, man, this guy I brought with me today, I've been asking him, trying to get him to church for 2 years. He's never been in church, any kind of church. He's almost my age, just old, nice guy. Rough guy, but nice guy. He said, I've tried to witness to him. He said, but he was in, but you gave such a clear plan of salvation. And you just presented the gospel, and it was just exactly what he needed. And I had no idea. I didn't even think, maybe I shouldn't even do that right then, because all these guys, they know the gospel. But that's just what kind of God let me do. And it was exactly what that one man needed. And that's kind of God saying, I got this. When you don't have anything to give, it's okay. Let me give it to you, and you just do it. It'll be good. And that's not a brag thing. That's not. It's a praise. But it was a confirmation to me again. Confidence that helped my faith in a time when I didn't have it. And that's how God works. But we have to let that. That was hard. That was the first time I can remember that I was like feeling sick to my stomach before I got up there, because I was terrified. It was like, oh, this isn't going to go well. And I don't know if it went well or not, but I trust that it did because of just that. But it's a really neat thing afterwards, but it's really hard to do. But that's okay. That's what he wants. I'll shut this thing down. Get out of here. Okay, Quinn.